Hey, Mark Szymanski here. I want to talk to you about a specific portion of the web design life cycle, so to speak, when you're dealing with clients, particularly the part between, okay, we have a client or clients are interested in working with us, all the way up to where we actually start sending like paperwork and things like that. There's a lot that happens in the section where you're like vetting the clients, so to speak, where you're creating a good flow to get their information, set up a meeting, and then actually have that discovery call or synergy session is what I like to call it. And I think that there's a lot to be had in there. I want to make this as concise as possible. Let's get into it. I'm going to show you 7 years of experience of what I have learned during this time of what to do, what not to do. Hopefully it's valuable. If it is, click that like button and we'll dive right into it. Real quick before we get started, I just want to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, BigScoots. They've been providing high quality managed hosting solutions since 2010, and perhaps even more impressive than their technology is their customer support, which is some of the best in all of WordPress. I actually had the pleasure of meeting the BigScoots team while I was out in Portland at WCUS 2024, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that they care about their customers and the greater WP community. If you're looking for a great hosting experience, I would strongly encourage you to click the link in the description and give BigScoots a try. Now let's get back to the video. So as we dive into this, we're going to use findatech.com. That's my agency website for any demonstration purposes. It's important to note up top here that you're going to have many different ways that people are going to reach out to you. I've always liked the idea of trying to make it as concise as possible. As we get to more serious clients, for sure you're going to have people reaching out just in your personal DMs. If you're, telling people that you build websites, you're going to have people maybe reaching out via, a phone if you actually have a phone number out there. Maybe other directories and things that you're listed in, other social platforms, whatever. But ultimately, as web designers, I think we all kind of agree with this, that the website is the hub. If we can control, like the most of the integrations or the flows of everything through our website. So that's why we're specifically talking about that. But obviously, there's other ways that people can contact you. Assuming that they do get to your website, you could even have landing pages and things along those lines. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible for you guys to, kind of learn from and then, expand upon. So let's just talk about a simple contact page is kind of our main thing. So whatever your website looks like, whatever you're trying to do, obviously have some sort of call to action. That call to action could be a free consultation session. We'll get into more of that though, because there's some nuance there that I've just had an incredible amount of like annoyance and trouble by, and we're going to get into that. Don't worry. But you have to have some sort of call to action. If it's a synergy session, if it's some sort of website audit, I'm giving you the ideas, but in my mind, I like just as simple as possible. Let's book a synergy session. You call it a discovery call, whatever. But the idea of this internally for you is on this call, you have certain objectives that we will walk through in this video, and we'll talk about the things that you should definitely be kind of thinking about and make sure that information you're getting. But in this case, very simply here, somebody would come to the website, they'd click, make sure call to action is all over the place and showing exactly what you're doing and everything. When you book a synergy session, something simple, a simple contact form, or something where you're managing some expectations. That's a huge piece. Some social proof. Obviously, this is not a design tutorial. This is more just like an overarching flow kind of tutorial and some tips. So we're not going to go into every detail, but I will give you one. This is the first, if you want to put a gold nugget, I'll put a gold nugget in the timestamp. This is the first one. I've experimented very recently with putting a calendar here instead of just the contact form. Now, I don't know if this is for everyone, but in my personal experience, I get a lot of spam through these. Now, not spam as in complete garbage, weird links and stuff like that, but getting through whether it's a Google reCAPTCHA, Cloudflare Turnstile, it's spam that is just not good leads. It's people trying to either reach out for not clients. Maybe they're white labelers. They want to partner with you or whatever. If you're looking for those types of contacts, then okay, that's fine or whatever. But in the first, I'll give you an actual real world data here. In the first week of me putting a calendar in place of this contact form, I had 2 meetings scheduled that were not clients. They were random other things. They might have been scam-ish, but they actually booked on my calendar. And that was the first time that I had ever had that actually happen. There's obviously ways to kind of negate a little bit of that. But the easiest way that I found right now is to just put a contact form instead with the pertinent information, and then you can kind of follow up with the calendar thing. This is also another thing here. Understand what we're doing. The point of this video is to not tell you how to get more leads. We can make a separate video on that, and I can give you some tips on that. The point here is when you are getting some leads, or when you do get a lead, it's no good to get a bad lead. Like, I mean, yeah, it's fine. You can get that and you can talk to that person or whatever. But honestly, from my experience, if you can get good leads at all, the bad leads are just a waste of your time. So in my personal use case, and again, you guys modify this to your business, I don't want garbage coming through these forms if I can, negate it. I absolutely do not want useless meetings on my calendar. So that's why I bring up the point about the calendar, because I don't want that. Okay, so if we go back to it here, we have just simple contact form. Try to explain what's going to happen here, okay? I think is a really good thing. If somebody's going to fill this form out, they should know what is going to happen. So you fill out the form, we'll have a 30-minute meeting. We'll see if we're good for a job. You can adopt that or do whatever you want there. Again, some social proof. And then once they submit this, generally, okay, make sure when people submit a form, they know that they submit a form. You can do this in many different ways. You can do a little message here at the bottom and make sure the form goes away, like the actual fields and everything, so they understand. You could send them to a thank you page. You should probably send them an email confirmation, just things like that. If you want to add them to a mailing list and stuff, maybe definitely check some boxes as far as, make sure they opt in and everything. But at that point, now they've reached out to you and you're going to get an email as well. Obviously, make sure all that works. The other cool thing that you could do, that because again, you own this flow, is you could dump that information into a CRM or something like that. Again, technical tutorials outside the scope of this, but I'm trying to give you some good thoughts to continue to adopt and adapt to your own situation. The next big point, once they've reached out via a contact form like that, is I literally hate the idea of manually scheduling meetings. There's some people that are probably going to give me pushback on that, because they're like, maybe it's a little more personable if you don't make somebody go to your calendar. In my mind, I don't like that. That's extremely inefficient. We could definitely have a discussion about that, but I'm going to always use a Calendly, or in this case, a late point or something to automatically schedule my meetings for me, because I have a calendar. I keep it very organized, and then you can see at a glance what works for you. I think it works. I think most people are okay with it, especially now. It's becoming pretty ubiquitous. So create a page. What I would do, and what I have here, is just a similar page. Honestly, it looks almost exactly the same. I wouldn't necessarily recommend making it exactly the same, but something like this, as I was testing before, like I said, with the calendar versus the contact form, something like this, where you got that contact form, and then the next thing is you reach back out to them, you reply to that, and you say, hey, thanks so much, and in between there, though, right, I'm trying to give you the nuance. In between there, you actually vet them, okay? You want to look into maybe their business and see if it fits you a little bit. You're not going to know that much from that information, only as much as you can kind of dig up, but it's really just to protect against complete spam or people that are not actual prospects. Once you've made that decision, okay, and you've made that call, then you have to send them somewhere like this to get on your calendar. And again, it could be in different forms, but that's what you need to do. Again, probably set some expectations, maybe make it look a little different or whatever. But this page, in my book, is not public. This page is not indexed, okay? This page is not publicly accessible on the website. It is specifically sent directly to the people that make it through that first kind of, very, shallow vetting process with the contact form. Once you do send this link to them, make sure they know what to do here, okay? Say hey, here's my calendar, take a look at it, grab some time that works best for you, and then they can come here and they can see. Make sure your calendar, if you're gonna do this, is up to date and syncing properly, because you don't wanna get double booked. So you come in here and they're like, okay, well, let's do, the 20th, and they can see all the times. This, to me, this is just such a great flow for this. I don't know why anybody wouldn't use this. This is late point. I'll leave a link in the description, but it doesn't matter what tool you use. Something like this that's automated makes my life a whole lot easier, and it honestly makes them better, because you're not going back and forth with emails. Oh, does this time work? Does this time work? Whatever. So then you're in here. This is, again, an important part. You have another opportunity here to, as a low barrier of you don't want to cause too much friction, okay? You want them on your calendar. If you've realized that they're a decent lead and they're actually, there might be something there, you definitely want them on their calendar. I'm going to give you some tips here, again, that things that I've tried and have worked, kind of not worked. I have tried in the past to put some questions. One of the questions that I've tried to put is budget. I've put brackets. I've put 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 20,000, 20,000 to 50,000 or something like that. From my experience, that's kind of a stupid thing to do, okay? It might work for some people depending on how you put it. I've even wrote above that question, this is not going to affect how much the website is. it's going to tell us like if we can work with you or something like that. It just doesn't really work for me, at least. Maybe there's a better way to do it. You guys, if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments below. It's not really the right time to ask for budget. When we get into the actual synergy session part of this, I will explain some things that I think I've learned there, but it's not a good time to ask it because you're going to kind of scare them. And most of the time, every single time, in my experience, they're going to pick the lowest one. So it's either, the problem there is either that they are not understanding why you're asking that question, which is very possible, or they are just scared by that question and they don't want to answer a higher number, or what the case is, or very possible here, and this is more of another topic that we could kind of dive into at a different time, is that the clients that you are attracting are not the clients that you actually want. Like if you're looking for people to click the $20,000 button and they're clicking the $5,000 button, that's a problem. Outside the scope of this video, but the questions that I do ask right now are, which of these most accurately describes your current website situation? I would love this to be a multi-select too. It's something that LatePoint doesn't have just yet, but something like this, however, you can structure your questions. I don't have a website. My website is too slow. My website is outdated. I can't make website like content edits to my website. I like getting this answer. I want the minimum but best information that I can from this form right here, because I want to know, or you could do it in the other form, but this is a nicer form because now they're actually interested in vetted. I want to know what their biggest pain point is, like off the bat, or maybe there are a couple biggest pain points, just so I know kind of what I'm working with. If I know that their website's slow, if they say their website's slow, then they might not they might be okay with some of the design aspects and things like that. If they don't have a website, that's actually generally a totally different client depending on where they're at in their business, right? It just gives you a little bit of an idea. It doesn't give you the whole story, but you can take this information into the meeting and be like, hey, you said that your website was outdated. What the hell do you mean by that, right? And then like dig into that. So that's a really good question, I think, to ask. And then I think you should always ask this question no matter what, whenever you're taking a new client on. You need to know where they found you. You obviously can tell a little bit of this from analytics and things, but you should definitely like know your lead. Okay, again, think about where we're at in this cycle here. This lead is at least half decent that you sent them this calendar, right? So where did they come from? Did they find you Google search? They find you in Clutch, LinkedIn, referral, what have you? You can expand the list, but those are, I think, two important questions to kind of ask there that I think you should definitely consider asking. There's more. I've experimented with some other ones. Like maybe you could ask how big is your team or what role are you or things like that. But I mean, honestly, I don't necessarily think I would go that far. Again, talking about friction, I want to keep it as low as possible here because we'll talk about the questions that you need to ask once you get in. But a couple of these type things might be beneficial up front. You do want to get them on your calendar. Again, if they're a half decent lead, you do want to get them into your calendar so you can talk to them, because that's actually where you're going to try to actually sell them on things and stuff like that. Simple contact information, okay, first name, last name, phone, email address, company name. I do think that somewhere in here you need to at least get the company name. Potentially it'll be in the email address, but not always. I do think, and it might be something I refine here, company name and potentially actual website URL. I really do think that that's probably a good thing to put in there. Sometimes though, people aren't going to have a website, whether that is or isn't the type of client you're looking for. So I would also say maybe in this section, just say like website name. Would be another good thing. And again, it doesn't matter how you structure those questions, maybe all in one or, kind of like one question at a time. It's the limitations of whatever, platform you're kind of working with and whatever, scheduling tool. But once they pick their time and they fill out all this information and everything's good there, a very important part, okay, is that make sure, and most of them do this by default, but maybe some take some configuring, make sure that they are getting a confirmation calendar invite to their email. There have been times in the past where, depending on what platform you're using, the calendar invites like aren't going out, they're not sending because like you don't have email configured properly, or the platform's not configured properly, or whatever the options aren't, whatever. Make sure that you're getting it on your calendar and they're getting it on their calendar. We have automated to a degree this process to this point. Let's not lose it right here when like we just send an email saying like, hey, our meeting is, December 15th at 10 a.m. and it actually doesn't go into their calendar. They don't get a thing where they can just click a button and it just gets added there. You got to make sure that that is a something that your scheduling tool offers, which most do, again, like I said, but make sure that's working, okay? Make sure that your calendar is linked up and organized for all that so you don't get double booked. Make sure that the calendar invites actually go on there, okay? You don't want that to be an issue because now your whole system is a little messy. All right, so now we're at the point where, okay, you have a calendar. There's literally a new meeting on your calendar, right? You could do a couple of different things here. If you haven't actually talked to them, like maybe you've just sent that one email, maybe you could follow up with them and kind of get maybe some more information if you want. Depending on where you're at and what type of projects you're doing, honestly, I don't know if that's like the best use of that time in between this second that they fill it out and the meeting time. But that's something to consider. What you should definitely do though, in between them scheduling and then your actual meeting, is have an automated, preferably, reach out that reminds them about the meeting. And this is kind of crucial, right? Because hopefully they got the calendar invite if you have everything set up properly, but they are probably going to forget about it. And hopefully they manage their calendar well, but some people don't. So then have an automated reach out or reminder, maybe like a day before. Most platforms have that where you can automate that, so you don't have to remember and just manually type in before, a day before to send that email out. I think that would be a nice thing. Make sure it's kind of personalized if you can, with variables and stuff given the platform. Also, give them an easy way to get out of the meeting if you want, or at least reschedule the meeting, or give a call to action to change that meeting. Again, we don't want people canceling meetings. We don't want people rescheduling meetings because we like to keep our calendar good. But sometimes that does have to happen, and we would much rather have somebody reschedule the meeting rather than not show up to the meeting. Because if at least we know in advance a little bit that the meeting isn't going to happen at 10 a.m., whatever, then at least you know that, so you don't have to sit there for 15 minutes with a no-show. So that's a really good thing. Definitely give them that opportunity to do so, and make sure you're reminding them about this meeting before it happens. All right, so now we're going to talk about this meeting, okay? I call it a synergy session. The reason I call it a synergy session is because I don't see, well, think about all this. We've done all of this work to get them to this meeting, or set all these things up to get them to this meeting. We've vetted them a little bit here and there. They're probably a half-decent client. What does that mean, though? Absolutely nothing. Okay. Do not get excited about this. Okay. I know the web design industry. I know that leads are sometimes at a premium. Maybe they're referrals, whatever. I don't care where they came from. I don't care, if they're good, bad, and different. I don't care if it's your dream project. Do not get excited ever until the money hits your business checking account. Okay. Don't ever get excited about the project. Be excited to potentially build something like that, but do not get don't ever count your chickens before they hatch, so to speak. It's happened to me way too many times, and I'm so immune to it now. It's no. So the reason that I say all that, okay, and your experience level, your mindset might be a little different, but here's my perspective. This is called a synergy session because even though I've done the vetting and I kind of know maybe who you are, and I know your website, and I know from my mind what you need, kind of in a way what I would do to your website, and you've filled out a couple things about why you don't like your website or what's wrong with it. Even though we've done all of that, okay, we are still at the point here where there's no guarantee that we're working together. Absolutely none. You might think, the easiest example in the book, you might think that the things that you need cost $500. And in my actual, knowledge of how much this costs, or how much something is worth, or how much time it's going to take, it might be $5,000. That's the easiest one. There's a litany of other things that we could talk about, red flags for days and all that sort of stuff. That's not really the entire point of this. The point is that we're going into a synergy session, or discovery call, or whatever you want to call it, because we are trying to see if we are a good match. Do we have synergy? That's why I call it a synergy session. If we are not a good fit, also you could probably tell I didn't highlight as much when I was looking at when we were looking at the website, but the verbiage is, are we a good fit? Let's find out. This is a mutual partnership type thing. I mean, obviously we're the experts in web design and you're paying us to do it, but it's not like a dictatorship necessarily. It's you're hiring us to solve a problem. Can we solve that problem? Are we a good fit to work together? Because there is a little bit of back and forth and things like that. We do not work with everybody, okay? And again, depending on where you're at, you might not be able to say that necessarily, and I understand that fully. However, I do think that if you adopt that mindset to a little bit more, you're going to get stepped on and trampled less, and you're actually going to have a better experience in this industry, because a lot of people subject themselves to that, and I would not recommend that whatsoever. I would rather have 5 clients that pay me the same amount, that pay me more, than 30 clients that pay me less, right? I think in the long run, you're going to be kind of better there. And it's not just even all about money. It's about the actual managing expectations. We could do small projects, but we're not going to do a lot of work for a little bit of money. That's kind of the generality that I would kind of place on that. Those are the big overarching topics of what this thing is, this meeting. It's more important than you think, and it's more important than just like giving them like free advice and free consultation and things like that. I have done this. The whole reason, honestly, I'm making this video is because I have done this so many times where I've sat in a call with somebody for an hour or more. I have given them top tier advice on what they should do. And then at the end of it, they turn around and they're like, yeah, actually, you know what? This is too expensive, or we went with somebody else. We're going to build it ourselves with Wix or whatever. I give a ton of free information out. I have no problem with that. My thing is like when we're in this business setting here and we're actually in like a sales environment, sales call, I want to make sure that like we're at least tackling the objective of that meeting. And as I said earlier, the objective is to make sure we're a good fit, make sure we're on the right wavelength, and make sure that there is some actual synergy between us that we might be able to work together. If there's a ton of red flags, things like that, it's not going well. And you, the web designer, can absolutely say that, you know what, actually, we're not a good fit. You're not a good fit for us. We're not even going to propose something on this project. And that is the point of this meeting. You don't necessarily need to give a proposal to every single person that you talk to. Hopefully you are, because your vetting is good and you can get to this point. You can actually like have some synergy. It's not going to happen every single time. So let's talk specifically though when we're in this meeting. Okay, you're either in person or you're in like a Google Meet or Zoom or whatever, and you're actually conducting this meeting. There are an absolute infinite number of questions that if you're an inquisitive web designer and web architect that you could ask these people on this call. Okay. You have to really understand, and unfortunately I'm going to have to use some generalities here because I'm trying to make this video for any web designer to do, and you might be niched into a specific, industry or whatever. The first thing I would think of is like, who am I talking to? Am I talking to somebody that's more technical? Am I talking to more of a tradesman? Am I talking to like an executive? Like, what are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Are they the decision maker, or are they somebody in the company that is going to have to run this up the flagpole to somebody, right? Like, what size of an operation are we talking about here? What is the relationship between the project and the actual person that I'm talking to? If it's the decision maker, you can kind of go more into like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for you. This is how it's going to impact you. This is why, and this is kind of sell it, and so to speak. If it's not the decision maker, if they're not the person that's going to sign and actually pay you, then you have to, what I've done is you have to take like more of an approach of they're your inside man in the company. You have to understand why their life might suck, and you have to understand how you can make that better for them so they can be on your side, and then you both can go to like the man that actually makes the man or woman that makes the decisions and be like, hey, we should do this because this, and this. And now you, somebody on the outside and somebody inside their company, is actually selling the job for you, is one way that I would think about it. So understand who you're talking to, very first thing on this synergy session call. The next thing is very related, and again, it'll depend on who you're talking to, but I've changed my mind like heavily on this many times before. I used to think always like, hey, I'm going into this project and I'm like, here's all the things I can do for you, whatever. Like, you could do that. You could try to pitch them on a solution. If they came to you though, they probably have an issue, or maybe like you have spotted some issues or something like that. Here is an approach that I think you should consider, okay? Ask them, and it's just like a very simple framework that I just kind of loosely came up with, but you could take in many different directions. First line of questioning in this meeting is, hey, what's the problem you're experiencing? Like, why are we even on this call? Like, you obviously had a reason to hop on a call with a web designer, right? Or like, a marketing agency or something like that. What's your problem? The problem is probably it's either going to be something so ridiculous that like isn't actually the root cause of a problem. It's probably going to be a root cause or a symptom, and it's going to be something either ridiculous that doesn't make any sense, and we'll come back to that in a second, or it's going to be something actually like super tangible and pretty much the same type of problem that everybody has, that we're not making enough money, we're not getting enough leads, or we need more employees or something like that. Like something very, very straightforward and very simple that if you are a good designer, marketer, things like that, you can actually help with. If it is that case, then we could talk about that, and it's pretty much straightforward down the line. Like if you agree with that problem right off the bat, then you're going to have some synergy there, right? Like if you looked at something and you saw and you're like, in my expert opinion, this, and this is kind of wrong with this, and you had that in your mind, you asked them what the problem was, and then you agreed with that, that's literally a great sign that there's some synergy there. It's like, you understand what's wrong with your business and don't know how to solve it. I understand, I saw what was wrong with your business and I know how to solve it, and then we can kind of go from there. So that is one of the best case scenarios, okay? But don't give them the answer, okay? Don't let them off the hook. If they're coming to you and they genuinely don't know, then that's a different scenario and you have to put on your expert cap and just lead the way. You're going to do that anyway, but you have to do that from the get-go. From the beginning here, though, a really good way to figure out if you're going to have some synergy is see if they know what the problem is, okay? If they don't know what the problem is, like I'm going to tell you here, then there might be some issues. So let's say that you ask them what the problem is and they say, the color is blue instead of red. Like, that's an oversimplification, but that is a sign that like they don't know what the hell the problem is. They don't know, they think they know what the problem is with why they're not getting leads or whatever, and that is actually not it whatsoever. And if they think that they're going to solve things, like if they think that they just need you to do the work and not actually problem solve the issues, that is a problem, okay? That is a red flag from the beginning. It's fixable, but you got to be careful. If you have a client, which many of us will do, like this will happen because the people that we're dealing with are people of power, influence, or like, over their team at least or whatever, and they're normally business owners, so they are a little like alpha in that way, or type A, like they're, we're problem solvers, right? The problem is that this is probably a different game than they normally play. They're probably used to solving like business problems in a different industry, and this is like digital marketing. They might know nothing about it. So very, very important. It's happened to me many times. When a client comes to you and they say they know what the problem is and they just want you to, they know how to fix it too most of the time, and they just need you to do it, that is a concern, okay? That is something that I would immediately push back on and be like, if it's completely wrong, I would say something like this. Hey, I see where you're coming from. However, I've been doing this a very long time, and I actually completely disagree with you on what the actual problem is. Like maybe that's like maybe like a super out there symptom of the problem. Say maybe a little nicer than this, but be frank with them. If you don't nip this in the butt from the get-go, it's going to continue to stem. I've seen it happen personally. Okay, so you can't let them drive this. And this is where your value comes from, okay? If you can nip this in the butt, one of two things are gonna happen. One, they're not gonna like it and they're gonna get off the call, or they're not gonna work with you. Honestly, you're better off. If they do like it or they do appreciate it, then they're gonna be like, oh, wow, this person actually knows what they're talking about. They're not just like listening to me and just acting like a robot. They're actually providing value that I hadn't thought of. So like another way of thinking of it, more experience, whatever, that I just never had, or I never whatever. So that takes a little bit of, understanding on their end, and depending on who you're talking to, maybe that does or doesn't happen. But this is a key piece of it, okay? If you're talking to somebody in this meeting, you have to understand that. That is where the synergy comes from. That is one of the main pieces of it. So to recap here, we're asking what the problem is. We're seeing if we agree with that problem or what kind of like problem that is. And then we're also agreeing kind of in the same vein to like, do we agree on the solution? And really between the lines here, who's the leader, who's the expert at digital marketing, okay? If you're dealing with an architect, okay, and you're a digital marketer and they hire you for digital marketing, realistically, okay, the client is not paying you for them to tell you what to do or for you to ask them even what to do. It's your job. You're the expert. I know that's a little backwards or a little like maybe different than you may have think before, because like you just want to like make the client happy. But I'm telling you that you don't want to just blindly follow whatever it is that they think is the issue or what they're saying or what they want you to do. Make them happy, but make them happy by taking what they see as an issue, translating that into your head to actually what is the issue and how you can get them results, and then just deliver on that. Most people are not going to care how you get there as long as you do get to a result, whether that's a new design website or just better lead generation or what have you. So hopefully at this point you understand that the synergy session is really important, but you're also not getting like every single fine detail right now. We could get that, and I will talk about that in a second here, but I'm telling you, these are the main things. Before you even talk, I've done this so many times where I just jump in, I'm like, okay, what are we building? Bad idea, okay? Terrible, terrible, terrible idea. You do not just jump into what are we building. You have to understand and feel this out a little bit more at a higher level before you jump into those nitty-gritty details. Once you have a little bit of the vibe, okay, and you understand that, now we can jump into maybe some of those conversations where it's like, This is the issue, okay? This is the issue that you're going to run into. I'm sure you've ran into it before because I know I have. The problem is you ask those questions or you get that little bit of a vibe, right? That's fantastic. But now the issue is, okay, I do see some synergy. I see how we can solve this problem. The problem is, what are we going to build is really the question. But ultimately, how much is that going to cost, right? How much is the solution going to cost? Now, over the next maybe back half of the meeting or however it lays out, you have to make your next call here, okay? You could have incredible synergy with these people. They could love you. They could totally understand exactly what you do, that you're the expert. They understand and they almost like default to your opinion. That is the best thing you could ask for. There is a second part of this. They have to have the amount, they have to have the money to compensate you for the value that you're providing. This is super subjective. It depends on where you live in the world, depends on how you value yourself, depends on all sorts of stuff, right? Depends on your team size, all that. But regardless of what the numbers are, you have to know your numbers and you have to actually be able to get that out of the engagement, because if you don't, then you're doing yourself and the client a disservice, because your client's going to be up a creek without a paddle if you go out of business because you didn't pay yourself enough money. You didn't get enough money, right? So it's just don't ever worry about don't ever be ashamed of charging what you physically, literally need to run your business. Don't ever be ashamed of that. This next objective here in this second half of this meeting is to literally figure all that out. You have to figure out if their perception of the solution that you've kind of outlined and agreed upon is as valuable as the price that you are probably going to put on it. This is not really easy. It's not easy for two reasons. Like I said, it's not easy because it depends on like where they're at, but it also depends because you still don't know what you're building. You have to kind of ask questions, and this is only going to get easier with time. You have to kind of have a feel of what things are generally going to cost. And then on the back end, when you're actually pricing things, like you kind of just study almost like your actual pricing sheet and then kind of have a good estimating mind to it, and then give them something that would kind of gel with what would actually end up happening. So for instance, there's been many times where I hop on this call and I'm like, okay, we're going to need this CPT, this CPT, this CPT. We're going to need 4 forms. We're going to need, e-commerce. We're going to need all this sort of stuff. And I'm like kind of pricing it in my head and trying to do all that. You have to kind of do that, but they're not really going to know the extent of that, right? They're not going to know how many forms you're going to need. They're not going to know the CPTs. They're not going to know all that sort of stuff. So it's almost, you have to talk about it in a very theoretical way. Like, do you want team members on there? Do you want, like a blog? Do you want that type of stuff? Maybe make a list of all the things that you think you can provide and then write all that out and then ask those types of questions. But ultimately, again, I try to limit the amount of questions I ask of like, what do you want? They should not be telling you what they want. You are, again, the leader and the expert. Keep that hat on, okay? And you are telling them what they need based on your experience in that industry, competitors, and all that sort of stuff. So again, this is where it gets tricky. There's another way to navigate it too. Another way to navigate it is if the project, depending on how big it is, you can navigate it with a paid discovery situation. This is why I don't like calling this call a discovery call, because I'm not really discovering shit on this call. I'm pretty much just assessing the synergy, and then I'm trying to understand, can this be done? Can I estimate this for them? Or do I need to go deeper and I need to actually do a full paid discovery, which is basically getting paid to tell people what you would do for them. Not actually doing it, but developing a plan, so to speak. And then it's pay us $2,000. We'll do the discovery and everything like that. We'll do the discovery phase essentially. And then if you want to continue, then we'll charge you the remainder of the price of the website or the build out and everything. And then if not, then now you paid $2,000 and you have the plans and you can take it to somebody else and they could enact it for you and implement it for less than maybe we would. That's the idea of paid discovery in a nutshell. That step needs to happen, okay? It needs to happen either before you start building in the paid discovery lens, or it needs to happen during the project in the first step. So you have to make a call there. I can't really tell you. I can't really tell you if it's going to work. I mean, maybe the easiest way is to think of, okay, if a project starts going past $20,000 or $10,000 or something like that, then we need to enact paid discovery, because the biggest problem that I've had in my life with this is I think that a project is going to be, for some reason, easier than it is or smaller than it is, and then it gets out of hand fast, which is, again, managing expectations and being the leader and not taking shit from your clients. But the biggest thing there is not letting that happen and trying to see it from the start. You have to have a really good, when you send them the proposal, which we have yet to get to, It has to be what you're actually going to do for the amount of money. Do not deviate from that, okay? But let's stick to this last bit of the synergy session because this is really important because this is where it all kind of comes together. You've just established synergy, no synergy, whatever. If you haven't established synergy, then there's an option here for you. But let's assume like it's going pretty well, you cannot leave this call, okay? This is the biggest time waste, okay? Huge time waste right here. You cannot leave this synergy session. If you plan on writing a proposal, you absolutely need to get a verbal confirmation from them that says, yes, that's within our budget. What I mean by that is that you are going to go through this whole thing. You're going to be estimating in your head, hopefully, if it's like a smaller project or whatever, or, something that you can feasibly like kind of understand. And then you're going to say, okay, client, listen, I really think we have some solid synergy here. I think that you have problems that we're able to solve. We agree with those problems. And it seems like we're kind of in agreement on the actual solution to that, right? We kind of agree at a high level what needs to happen, right? That's fantastic. Love that. That's the point of our call here on these synergy sessions. Here's the last thing though. The last thing is I understand what I need to provide for you. You understand what you want out of this and in all lines. I need to know that what I'm going to provide for the price that I have to charge for that is in agreement with what you're able to actually dish out, okay? We need to understand that your budget aligns, again, throw this in ChatGPT, okay? We need to make sure that your budget aligns with the solution that we're gonna actually provide for you based on all these discussions, right? This is one of the best ways that I've found to do this because then you say, okay, based on what we talked about here, this is probably going to be somewhere between, give them a bracket, do not give them an actual number, say like it could be a big bracket too. Like say between $10,000 and $20,000 is kind of what we would estimate based on everything we talked about here. This is what this is going to be. Literally, you could do this, okay? I've done this. I think it's really direct and honestly, it works a lot of the time. Say, hey, I'm going to get off this call and I'm going to write you a proposal for everything we talked about here. That proposal from my estimating, as we've been on this call, is probably going to land, a total number is probably going to land between $10,000 and $20,000. Does that number, if I give you, phrase it like this, if I handed you a proposal right now and it had a number on it between $10,000 and $20,000, is that something that you would be comfortable with considering purchasing? Is it within your budget? The reason I'm asking this question is because I want to make sure we're on the same wavelength here when it comes to pricing. It seems like we are with the solution, but if the budget doesn't match up, then, obviously that doesn't make sense. At this point, people will tell you to just shut up, okay? Just shut up and see if they say yes. If they say yes, then fantastic. If they say no, then you could always say, okay, that's no problem. We can't lower the price of this solution, but what we can do is we can lower the scope of the project, like lessen what we're going to do. Maybe we're going to take out the blog or we're going to take out this or whatever, and it'll cost less. And then we could do it more in phases. Like we could do like a phase 1 now, and then later we could talk about adding those other things in when budget, is available. If you actually want to make sales, you have to do this. Okay. The worst and biggest waste of my time, I want to stress this because it's happened too many times, is writing up a proposal after talking to somebody when they have zero idea what the number is going to be. They don't like that, okay? They have anxiety before you even write the thing, and you have anxiety the entire time you're writing the proposal, okay? So it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of everyone's time. Make sure that you're getting the synergy, understanding the synergy, and then you're also understanding the synergy, not just with the solution and the problem and everything like that, but also with the actual budget that you're dealing with. If you don't do that, nobody's going to win. It doesn't matter. The worst thing they could say is, no, that's way too high, and we can't afford anything. It's like, okay, well, why were we even talking in the first place? That's, whatever. So like, that is 100% necessary. Don't ask like, oh, can you afford $20,000? No, just be like, this is probably where this proposal is going to land. Before I write it, does that make sense to you? Like, is that something you can consider? And hopefully they're truthful and they say yes. And then you can kind of go from there as far as actually writing it up and getting an answer that now at this point, if they say yes to that and they agreed with the synergy and everything like that, think about it as well. What are they going to object to? I mean, maybe they object to the actual price, later down the line and when you send it and everything like that, or maybe you're competing with somebody, that makes sense. But I think a lot of times you're not going to be competing with somebody at those types of levels, as long as there is those synergy and the budget makes sense. I think you're going to close more deals. Okay, so I really wanted to make this video again specifically for the things that I've learned about this synergy session that I think that people do wrong, and I think that like could absolutely help them in just the reframing of the mind. So I know this video is getting long, and I don't want to continue to ramble. So I will make further videos on this. What I need from you is to tell me exactly what parts you're struggling with. Okay, I could think of a ton more as far as like what happens next here, as far as follow up, actually writing the proposal, and then I have a ton of stuff that I could tell you between the synergy session, like between them like having that meeting, then they can sign the proposal and everything like that, between them and paying, right? That's another whole section in my mind. So we could definitely talk more about that. But like I said, hopefully this was valuable. If it was, click that like button down below. Make sure you subscribe for more content like this. I just want to continue to share the things that I've learned so you guys can continue to get better, sell more websites, and make more money. It's very doable if you just continue to try to improve on your processes and your flows and everything that you know. I thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you in the next one.